In the early 2000s, a show called Def Poetry Jam provided a platform for both established and up-and-coming artists to share some spoken word.
Heart full of madness, covered with kind, pleasure designed to take over your mind. Furnished in godliness, painted in good, this tainted priesthood's got real saints misunderstood.
With a variety of talent, the show was able to provide opportunities for artists trying to make a name for themselves. In 2003, about a year before Kanye released his debut album, the up-and-coming artist was struggling to find his place as a rapper. At the time, he was only appreciated for his ability to make beats for other, more established rappers. Desperate for his music to be heard, Kanye would frequently pop into the offices of the higher-ups at Rockefeller Records and rap his songs to them. Most of the time, he was met with crickets, or even worse, laughter. Still, Kanye believed in himself and managed to build himself up. Eventually, he managed to land a spot on Def Poetry Jam. It is then that a seemingly anxious Kanye would begin to perform a poem titled Self-Conscious.
I'm so self-conscious. That's why you always see me with at least one of my watches. Rollies and Porsches then drove me crazy. I can't even pronounce nothing. Pass that for Stacy.
If the poem Kanye is reciting sounds familiar, you're likely more familiar with its musical counterpart, the third single off his debut album, and one of the songs that got him nominated for a Grammy, All Falls Down.
And when it falls down, who you gonna call now? Come on.
All Falls Down is the fourth track off of Kanye's debut album, The College Dropout. The track showcases some of Kanye's best writing across his entire discography, as he touches on issues of race, materialism, and going against the grain. Within this video, we're going to examine the poetry behind All Falls Down to develop a greater appreciation for one of Kanye's most iconic songs. Without further ado, it's time to break down All Falls Down. To provide some additional context to All Falls Down, let's begin by briefly looking into how hip-hop looked around this time. What do you see? You probably see a lot of gangster rap. In the early 2000s, hip-hop was defined by its emphasis on crime, drugs, women, and money. The genre was still very young and had lots of mold to break. In the early 2000s, Jay-Z, Eminem, Nas, and 50 Cent kind of embodied the hard image that record labels were looking for. At the time, it was just accepted that in order to be a rapper, you had to fit into a box. If you weren't rapping about guns or girls, you would likely be turned down. Studio executives just weren't convinced that a rapper would sell if they didn't cater to what audiences wanted. If you weren't rapping like Jay-Z, you weren't going to rap. Needless to say, but there was very little room in hip-hop to be talking about your feelings or showing any kind of doubt in yourself. God forbid you ever cry.
Your feelings? To hell with your feelings! Everybody with their feelings! I'm obese, my kids are bred, help me! Just shut up!
Look at little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry.
With this additional context in mind, let's once again watch some of Kanye's Def Poetry performance.
I'm so self-conscious. That's why you always see me with at least one of my watches. Rollies and Porsches then drove me crazy. I can't even pronounce nothing. Pass that for Stacy. Then I spent.
With the added context of where the rap genre was at, this performance is incredibly bold. Although Kanye desperately wanted a deal, he wasn't willing to conform to what was expected of him. It would have been fairly easy for him to come up on stage and deliver a rap about being in a gang or something of that nature, but instead, Kanye is reflective and self-aware, a trend that would continue onto the album that this poem eventually landed on. All Falls Down is a layered and intricate exploration of wealth and education, from the perspective of a black person in America. While dissecting these ideas, Kanye makes sure that the focal point of the song is how money, school, and race directly influence one's self-esteem. The song is split into 3 verses, which each show Kanye rapping about being self-conscious from different angles. In the first verse, Kanye raps about a woman who has a low self-esteem due to basing her worth on material possession. In the second verse, Kanye pivots to rap about his own self-consciousness when it comes to him flaunting his money. And in the third verse, Kanye then offers perspective on how institutions in America directly influence people, particularly black people, into being self-conscious and basing their worth off of how much money they have. Let's start examining the first verse, where Kanye will rap about a black woman who is dealing with issues about money and education. Kanye kicks off the first verse, which we will now listen to in full. You'll have to excuse the performance since I don't want to get copyright striked.
Self-conscious, she has no idea what she doing in college. And major that she majored in don't make no money, but she won't drop out. Her parents will look at her funny. Now, tell me that ain't insecure. The concept of school seems so secure. Sophomore 3 years ain't picked a career. She like, man, I'll just stay down her and do it. That's enough money to buy her a few pairs, new pairs. Her baby daddy don't really care. She's so precious with the peer pressure. Couldn't afford a car, so she named her daughter Alexis. Had hair so long that it looked like weave. Then she cut it all off, now she look like Eve. She dealing with some issues that you can't believe. Single black female addicted to retail and well.
In this verse, Kanye uses this character he raps about to demonstrate how people tend to see college as the gateway to money and a higher sense of self-worth. He depicts a black mom that is financially irresponsible and only goes to college because of what society expects from her. To her, going to college is just to make her parents happy and to earn money. Kanye opens the verse with the phrase, "Man, I promise," which is used to indicate Kanye knows this woman very well. He has no doubt about what he's about to say about her. Kanye follows this introduction with a description of her situation. This woman has been a sophomore for 3 years in college due to her indecision about her future career. It seems she may have some aspirations, but she won't be able to make money off these dreams, especially not enough to support her child. In this line, the concept of school seems so secure. Kanye alludes to the fact that this woman perhaps got roped into the same trap a lot of people fall into when deciding to go to college. College is usually presented as the way to go in life, to secure a safe future for yourself. While this certainly can be true, college is very expensive, leaving many people in debt. This becomes especially true for people who go into it without fully knowing what they want to even pursue, and thus end up being a sophomore for 3 years. In an interview with Charlie Rose, Kanye elaborates on this subject.
I always tell people college is a choice. High school is a necessity, but college is a choice. A lot of times people go to school because it's what their parents want them to do. They're chasing someone else's dream. There's so many people that are majoring in stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to school, like, okay, if you're picking out Christmas gifts, you might have $500 and you got this list and you know exactly what you want to get. People go to school and they're spending $8,000, $10,000 a year, $15,000, and they have no idea what they want. Just stop. Just stop. Wait a second before you sign all those loans, before you put yourself in debt for the rest of your life, and say, what do I want to do with my life? Sometimes you just need a couple years after high school just to get yourself together.
Even in cases when people do know what they want to pursue, sometimes their field of interest is one that yields very little money. As we see in this song, Kanye then notes how this woman dropped out of college to do hair so she can make money to afford her material desires, a pair of new Airs. Finally, Kanye wraps up the verse by joking that this woman is so obsessed with wealth that she names her child Alexis. Lexus, of course, being the luxury brand of Toyota. He also brings up spending habits again, with references to her addiction to retail. In this verse, Kanye is riffing about a woman who is lost in life and has found pleasure in material goods. He gives reasons why college isn't always a viable answer and how people can find themselves in a hole when feeding too much into spending recklessly to show off. Kanye then kicks off the chorus, which is simply Selena Johnson singing the refrain, "All Falls Down." This chorus functions as a way to communicate that the shoes you wear or the car you drive don't really matter. When it all falls down, what do you really have? In the second verse, Kanye then becomes introspective, looking at how he has fallen victim to this mindset. Remembering what we discussed earlier about where hip-hop was at the time, not only was it revolutionary for Kanye to start this song about normal things the common person will go through, but Kanye then completely goes against the grain, declaring his own self-consciousness. A line that any rapper at the time would not dare to say, but Kanye boldly kicks off a verse that rejects every trope of hip-hop at the time. Kanye will now touch on how he has given into his personal battles with self-worth in relation to money and appearances. Let's take a listen.
I'm so self-conscious, that's why you always see me with at least one of my watches. Rollies and posses that drove me crazy. I can't even pronounce nothing past that for safety. Then I spent $400 on this, just to be like, dog, y'all ain't up on this. And I can't even go to the grocery store without some ones that's clean and a shirt with a team. It seems we live in the American dream, where the people high up got the lowest self-esteem. The prettiest people do the ugliest things, for the road to riches and diamond rings. We shine because they hate us, floss because they the greatest. We tryna buy back our 40 acres and pour that paper. Look how low we are stoop. Even if you in a bed, you still a and a coop. Come on, come on.
But baby, need to show it. But baby.
Kanye has split this verse into two halves. In the first half, Kanye describes how he feels he must always be covered in expensive clothes, even just to go to the grocery store. From his watch to his shoes, he sees the price tag of his clothes as an indicator of how important he is. He's so blinded with spending, he foolishly calls the brand Versace. He's buying anything he can get his hands on, not caring about who made it or where it's from, just as long as it's expensive. This self-consciousness also manifests into a toxicity in the line, quotes, "Then I spent $400 on this, just to be like N-word, you ain't up on this." Kanye is participating in a culture that is extremely common in the US, where someone with a lot of money, fame, or both will poke fun at or bully those who aren't as fortunate. For example, there are countless instances of people disrespecting minimum wage workers or Twitch streamers getting mad when their audience doesn't pay them enough.
But a sub is $5. At maximum, in whatever your currency is, it's maybe $10. And it doesn't matter how broke you are. If you have time to watch Twitch, you have $10, truly. If you don't have $10, you probably don't have time to watch Twitch because you should be working. You should be trying to earn money.
Usually, the people who are harassing are from a middle or upper class background and look down on people who they consider beneath them. In short, they're assholes. While this behavior is not okay, Kanye actually acknowledges this in the verse, noting how it all stems from his own self-consciousness. In the second half of the verse, Kanye begins to question the root of this ideology. He starts off with, "We live in the American dream, but the people highest up got the lowest self-esteem. The prettiest people do the ugliest things, for the roads to riches and diamond rings." Here, Kanye begins to see how the concept of the American dream has created this culture. The American dream is the idea that anyone with enough talent and hard work can change their socioeconomic class. What this ideology has then created is the perception that anyone who isn't successful is because they're simply not working hard enough or they're irresponsible with their money.
Get a goddamn job, Al. You got a negative attitude. That's what's stopping you. You gotta get your act together. I'll help you.
If you're on Twitter, you might have seen this stupid meme at some point, which people will genuinely use to prove their point that poor people just have bad spending habits. In reality, life is hard. The housing situation is horrible. Gas is literally $6 a gallon, and people are drowning in student debt. This isn't even to mention personal or generational issues. There are a myriad of reasons, legitimate reasons, why it can be difficult for someone to move up in life. And trust me, it isn't Starbucks. In fact, in a recent poll, the only group of people who still believe in the American dream are just old-ass boomers. So the youth is completely disillusioned with the idea of the American dream. So in this verse, Kanye is now saying that Americans have had their self-esteem intrinsically tied to their financial situation, which is wrong. No matter how much you make or what you own, you are just as important and cool as anyone else. By the end of the verse, Kanye begins to explicitly note how this attitude has influenced him and potentially other black people in America.
Bringing to be more inclined to care about their finances, as opposed to like African Americans, we would rather look rich than actually be rich. I think that's a part of like our community.
It's a culture, it's a choice.
Well,
on the final verse of the song, Kanye is taking a giant step back to look at the whole picture. His first two verses were personal, but on the third verse, Kanye speaks on the greater societal issues, mainly the intersections of racism and classism that he feels make black people develop the need for excessive amounts of money. Let's go ahead and listen to the verse in full.
I say skip the police, that's how I treat them. We buy way out of jail, but we can't buy freedom. We'll buy a lot of clothes, but we don't really need them. Things we buy to cover up what's inside. Cause they made us hate ourselves and love they wealth, that's why shorties holler where the ball is at. Drug dealer buy Jordan, crackhead buy crack, and the white man get paid off for all of that. But I ain't even gon' act holier than that. Look, I went to Jacob with 25 pounds before I had a house, and I'll do it again. I wanna be a 106 and park pushing a Benz. I wanna act ballerific like it's all terrific. I got a couple past due bills, I won't get specific. I got a problem with spending before I get it. We all self-conscious, I'm just the first to admit it. Say,
just like the first two verses, the first line immediately lets us know what this verse is about by quoting the famous NWA song, "Fuck the Police." A song which details the unfair treatment of black people from white cops. Kanye ties the concept of "fuck the police" into his thesis with the next line, "We buy our way out of jail, but we can't buy freedom." Kanye is bouncing off NWA's song, but instead looking at the role money plays into the equation. Black people are statistically more likely to go to prison, and Kanye is saying even if they were to buy themselves out, they're still imprisoned in a sense. He argues that white people will always be the ones with more money and opportunity, specifically with the line, "Drug dealer by Jordan, crackhead by crack, and a white man get paid off of all of that." This line shows Kanye being conscious of the cash flow. In two lines, Kanye expresses how the money black people spend on clothes or drugs will ultimately go right back into the pockets of white people. He's trying to articulate that people are being duped into wanting material possessions or drugs without realizing that's exactly the trap that's been laid out for them. It's a system that benefits the white man at the end of the day. Just like the second verse, Kanye has once again split this verse in half. The first 8 bars are exclusively about the role race plays, but the second half shows Kanye once again writing personally, this time explicitly stating how he contributes to this problem, being completely self-aware that he himself has been brainwashed to chase money and material goods. The first 3 lines execute this perfectly, but I ain't even gonna act holier than thou, cause fuck it, I went to Jacob with 25 thou, before I had a house and I'd do it again. Kanye is saying he's no better than the people he's criticizing. He states he went to Jacob, the jewelry store, to spend $25,000 on jewelry before even buying a house. He's so consumed with clothes and money that he'll recklessly spend $25,000 on a chain instead of a house. Despite acknowledging how stupid this decision is, Kanye says he would do it again, not experiencing any kind of serious regret about how he spends. Kanye wraps up the song confirming what we already knew. He wants to be wealthy, but is extremely irresponsible and does so to overcompensate. He spends his money on clothes, jewelry, and cars instead of anything meaningful or useful. The final line of the song, quote, "We all self-conscious, I'm just the first to admit it." Kanye is seemingly addressing people across the nation, but this could also be one final jab at his fellow rappers for being afraid to open up about their insecurities. Ultimately, the song stands as a defining moment for hip-hop, a place where the genre was undeniably shook up, changing the course the genre would go forever. Conclusions. We can definitely say this song is one of the earliest defining moments for Ye. Writing about issues in a sensitive and more personal way, Kanye was able to connect more with the everyday person who wasn't necessarily into gang violence or drugs. He details his personal battles with money, school, race, and inequality. What I really admire about the song is that Kanye isn't just breaking down racism or classism. He's specifically speaking on how those two work together to lower the self-esteem of black people. People in America tend to perceive wealthier people, or at least people who look wealthy, as better people.
See, money doesn't just buy you a better life, better food, better cars, better pussy. It also makes you a better person.
Indeed, rich people are generally perceived as smarter, more important, or more valuable than poor people, who are frequently perceived as dumb, lazy, or bad. This of course goes double for people of color, who are often perceived with the same negative characteristics as a poor person, especially compared to their white counterparts. Kanye meditates on how this perception has led him to value money over anything else, and how money is now tied to his sense of self-worth, ultimately making him a very materialistic and self-conscious person. This track is timeless. There's nothing he says on this track that isn't still true to this day. People of color and poor people are still treated egregiously, and it's because of the emphasis placed on money and your ability to make it. Even as I write this, I can acknowledge my own self-consciousness about money and my own desires for it. Lots of us fall victim to this mindset and end up feeling worse about ourselves in the process. Perhaps it would help if we started to ask ourselves what it would all mean when it all falls down.
You know you make me cry. I see no use in wondering why I cry for you. And now you change your mind. I see no reason to change